In Genesis 6, the sons of God cross the line, corrupting flesh, breaking God's design of each after its own kind. In Leviticus 18, humanity repeats the pattern, this time through ritual perversion, incest, child sacrifice, and bestiality. The common thread being spiritual contamination that defiles the flesh and the earth itself. Welcome to Beyond the Verse, where we will highlight the cosmic consequences of violating God's sacred boundaries and why the land doesn't just grieve, it vomits. Leviticus 18, 24 through 25. Do not defile yourselves by any of these practices, for by all these things the nations I am driving out before you have defiled themselves. Even the land has become defiled, so I am punishing it for its iniquity, and the land will vomit out its inhabitants. The verses leading up to this section highlights the many abominations and perversions of Egypt at the time, who was steeped in ritual systems of Babylon and Sumer, astrology, temple prostitution, and fertility cults. The list escalates from incestuous unions to adultery, child sacrifice to Molech, and even bestiality and other sexual perversions. These perverse ritual acts were used to invoke to gain favor from hostile spiritual entities. God directly ties these actions to the defilement of the land, as the sin creates spiritual toxicity in those geographical locations. In fact, the land becomes so sick that it vomits them out. This isn't just about bad behavior, it's about a cosmic rebellion. And just like in Genesis 6, where the sons of God went into the daughters of men, Leviticus 18 highlights this breakdown of God's natural boundaries, each after their own kind. God later reinforces his holiness over this situation. Leviticus 18:30. You must keep my charge not to practice any of the abominable customs that were practiced before you came, so that you do not defile yourselves by them. I am the Lord, your God. Holiness here is moral and ontological, a command to resist the spiritual assimilation into Babylonian gods. These practices are also connected to the divine command to destroy certain nations in the Old Testament. For example, in Deuteronomy 20 verses 17 through 18, it says, "You must completely destroy them, the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivitites, and Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded you, so that they cannot teach you to do all the detestable things they do for their gods, and so cause you to sin against the Lord your God." These included child sacrifice, sexual rites, sorcery, and idolatry. A deeper study into how this all connects to the Amalek and the Rephaim, Anakim, and the giant tribes shows a clear connection to the topic of the Nephilim regarding this issue. In fact, the favor of the nation of Israel, according to Deuteronomy 9 verses 4 through 5, wasn't that they were so special, but that they were the preservation against a corruption that was beyond repair. It is not because of your righteousness or your integrity that you are going in to possess their land, but on account of the wickedness of these nations. Israel was not chosen because of moral superiority. It was the judgment against the fallen spiritual powers as the main motivation for God. Genesis 6:12 says, "And God looked upon the earth and saw that it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth." This points to cosmic violation of divine boundaries, and all flesh likely includes not just spiritual, but perhaps even the genetic, showing that these are patterns that may emerge via ritual, not merely of bloodline. All of this corruption of the flesh talk leads us to the conclusion and takeaway, which can be highlighted in Romans 8 verses 3 through 4, where it says, "For what the law was powerless to do in that it was weakened by the flesh, God did by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful man as an offering for sin. He thus condemned sin in the flesh." Jesus is literally the anti-Nephilim. He is fully God, fully human, but undefiled against God's order and design. If you find this research helpful and interesting, tune into Canary Cry Clubhouse, hosted by my co-host of Canary Cry Radio and News Talk, Basil Rosewater, every Thursday, where he extends the discussion around these Beyond the Verse videos. You can even call in to share your thoughts and opinions. And make sure to tune into Canary Cry News Talk twice a week to get news deconstruction and analysis from a biblical perspective. Thanks for watching, and God bless.